I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the French Quarter on Charter Street. We lived right across the street from the St. Mary's Italian Church, and the midwife came to the house to deliver me. Total cost, $5. Back when my mom was alive, we used to go back to Hammond and visit a lot. And we would pick strawberries and or whatever was in season. And sometimes at the end of the day, my grandma would give us 3 or 4 pints to go sell on the highway for extra money so we could go to the movie or something. We would take 3 or 4 pints and go out on the highway and sell them anywhere from 10 cents to a quarter. But most of the time when they stopped and bought them, they would usually buy them all. Mainly, I think, because we were out there kids trying to work for a living, making some extra money. My grandma didn't have, and grandpa, they didn't have any electricity until maybe 1945. They couldn't afford to run the electric poles all the way to their house because they were like about a mile off the highway. As the kids grew up and that and started getting jobs and everything, they all pitched in and got the electric poles, so Grandma and them didn't have to use the kerosene lanterns, because that was kind of like, you felt like you was back in the 30s. Anyway, they finally got electricity in the house, and that was a real good thing. Well, at a pretty young age, I used to hang around with my cousins. Brother, his name was Pascal, family name was Brother, and Louis. So the 3 of us would go down to the French market, and the bananas used to come in on the ships, and they would take them off the ships and they'd load them up on the boxcars. Well, they had maybe big section of bananas. They would just whack them with a machete, cut the bad ones all out, and they would fall down on the ground. But a lot of the bananas was really good. So if you picked through them, you could just fill up a bag. But we would fill up the bag of bananas and take them home. And naturally, my Aunt Katie was very happy. All the trucks used to back up and sell all their fruits and vegetables and whatever they were farming. They would come from all parts of the Mississippi, Louisiana, and everything to sell everything. In fact, a lot of the grocery stores used to come there and just buy their stuff there. So they would take the substandard stuff, like if the birds ate on the tomatoes or any kind of damage whatsoever, and they throw them in a little box. And then we would come along and say, hey, you know, you got some extra tomatoes or something? And they'd say, yeah, go ahead and get them out the box and take whatever you want. A lot of times they used to sell them cheap, but when you were a kid, they would just give them to you. We would go home with a whole bag full of half-rotten tomatoes or cabbage or whatever the heck it was. But man, Katie would cut all the bad stuff off, and they had enough good stuff to make a nice dinner. Another time we used to go back and get the chicken feet. That's back when people couldn't afford to have meat. They actually threw them away. And she would take the chicken feet, scrub them real good, clean them, and make a good red gravy out of them. And we stayed pretty full with that stuff. Aunt Katie was my mom's sister, and she was also my godmother. And her husband was Pascal Saladina. He was my godfather. Well, my mother got sick. I was about 6 years old, and she had lupus erythematosus. And my dad was out working, so I would have to try to help her out. She showed me how to wash clothes and told me how to work the washing machine. It was the old round washing machine that you just put the clothes in. So I really learned from way back that you separate the white clothes from the colored clothes. And then sometimes after they were washing, you had to run them through this wringer. And of course I got my own caught in that one time, and it hurt pretty good. But they had a safety on it, and it would pop open and let you get your arm out. Well, I didn't do that anymore. That was the last time I ever got my hand caught. Knew how to get it out the way fast. Anyway, a lot of my years between 6 and 11 when my mom died was mostly helping her out in the morning. As soon as I got back home from school in the evening, staying with her until Dad got home. He used to work 2 jobs and sometimes 3 so he could pay the bills. Back then you didn't have any insurance. Everybody complains about insurance, but when you don't have any, you don't have nothing to complain about. You just have to pay the bills. So anyway, he was working most of the time, and I was babysitting until my mom passed away at the age of 28, and I was 11. After my mom passed away, I was 11, so my dad couldn't watch us, and he brought me to Aunt Frances and Uncle Charlie, and he brought my sister Lorraine to my grandma and grandpa. So they raised her, and Aunt Frances and Uncle Charlie raised me. Uncle Charlie put me in Catholic school, and then when I would come home after school, I would have to stack groceries in the grocery store, and whatever chores they had, maybe sort the returnable bottles or pump leaded gas only in those days. And we would do all kinds of darn things, like I'd have to pick up the flour bags and carry them to customers' cars and stuff. They were like, man, maybe 10-pound bags, and they were actually, they were made out of material that you could actually make a dress. So when people would come for their flour, sometimes they'd want a certain design. Naturally, that was at the bottom of the pile. So you'd have to unstack all the flour bags to get to the design they wanted. And that was the same thing with the jelly jars. They were actually not jars, they were glasses. And they were filled with strawberry or whatever they had in them. Working in the grocery store, helping Aunt Frances out, stacking groceries. I did mostly any kind of chores that we needed because I was actually a family member. And family members didn't get paid. They just had to do work and help out everything. And you was appreciated for what you had, what they were doing for me. They were raising me. And that was a really good thing. I had my own horse. And actually we had a couple of cows that I used to milk in the morning. And sometimes in the afternoon I'd go riding on my horse, meet up with some of my friends that they had horses. And we'd go ride them through the woods or either down the dirt roads. But we had a good time. And Frances and Uncle Charlie were really nice to me, and they didn't have any children, so they were really glad to have me come with them. And they treated me really good. In fact, that's when they started having drive-ins. And every Saturday night, they would take me to the drive-in. And they never did do things like that before. Well, I was about 15 years old, and my dad remarried and got settled down, and asked me if I wanted to come back home. And naturally, I couldn't wait to get back home again, especially back to New Orleans. When you're living in Hammond, it was like living 50 years ago. They were like, 2 centuries back from us. They still, a lot of them had kerosene lanterns and all that. So I was glad to get back to the electric light bulbs and cars and traffic and everyday life in the city. And I went to Nichols High School, and I started needing some money. I said, hey, my dad didn't have much, so he couldn't afford to give me any. So I went to some bakery that was close to my school and just asked them if they needed some help around there. And the guy said, yeah, we could use you, come in Sunday.